feature.
Pickle.
Who disrupts my coronation?
Everyone has been destroyed because of this freak. I won't allow it! These babies just saved this lame fest party!
You are listening to This Week in Geek.net. I'm your host, Mike the Birdman, and well, this isn't your normal bit of TWIG content. This is something that has actually been cooking up for quite some time because the weather is certainly getting nicer outside. Winter has finally decided to, frankly, fuck off, and now spring has sprung. Summer, you can smell it in the air if you smell really, really carefully, or maybe that's just the smell of Guelph. I don't know. But what does that mean for you, my lovely internet friends out there? Well, that means convention season is going to be coming around. In fact, as of this recording, I may be attending my first convention of the year, and that is going to be Guelph's own GriffCon, which is a tabletop role-playing convention. And depending on when Alex puts this out, because I never quite know when it comes to timing, but I'll ask him to put this up sooner as opposed to later. Conventions are a time where we get to hang out with friends. We get a chance to drag out our cosplays we've been working on all winter. And it's a good chance to be around community. And for the most part, that should be it. It should be a good frigging time. However, there's a side of conventions that a lot of people don't talk about. There is the dark side of the convention. And, you know, not all conventions are created equal. Some conventions go through growing pains. Some conventions die on the proverbial table before they're ever birthed. And some conventions eventually go from amazing and awesome to just kind of wet farts in the wind, and they kind of suck. So I've known this individual. His name is Walter-Schultz. I've known him for probably quite a number of years. I think we've only met a handful of times in person, but he's a local guy to me, and he's very much involved in the convention scene in Southern Ontario, Canada. Good guy. A lot of people just know him as Sid. You've seen him do Jedi cosplays. He's done stuff for Aliens, Marines. You've seen him do all sorts of cool stuff. You may have even seen him at your local convention walking around as the cosplay repair guy. And that's kind of awesome. So he put together this presentation called Red Flags in Fandom. And it just kind of covers conventions about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because we've had some interesting dealings in the convention space. But Walter definitely knows a lot more about it than I do, considering his convention involvement in so many in Southern Ontario. So he put together this presentation. And he wanted to get on the show, and I figure what time better than now as people are starting to buy hotels, passes, and whatever else is going on out there. And he wanted to bring sort of this public service announcement and this general conversation about his presentation, Red Flags in Fandom. And I think a lot of this is going to be very omnipresent considering as we move into convention season about what is going on out there and some things you may not necessarily be aware of. So without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Walter-Schultz, a.k.a. Sid, to the show.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you taking the time to, sound this out. It gives us a chance to at least chat with each other a little bit more.
Yeah, like, this is something you brought up to me, like, I can't even remember how long ago. It's been, like, forever. And trying to find a slot for this was always a bit of a challenge. But if you've been following my social media on Blue Sky, I've been inside for a little while, and stir craze is definitely starting to set in. But when you brought this up, the timing could not be coincidence, considering I'm starting to go to my first convention. And I'm about to say, you know what? I used to be involved with a couple conventions here in Southern Ontario myself, and they were remarkably well run. Like I used to be quite involved with Com Bravo when it was in its heyday. I was their public relations guy for a couple years, and I used to book kind of guests for them. But when I used to talk with some of the convention heads, I would hear horror stories about things that didn't go quite well with other conventions or things how things were starting to run. And then when I found out about your presentation, remember you talking to me about this quite a while ago, saying, did you ever consider X? And there were some things that happened in the Southern Ontario scene. We're not going to get into specifics of it. Where I was like, wow, that's pretty fucked up. And I didn't understand like how could this happen? And then you put together this wonderful presentation. So I'm not going to steal your thunder too much longer here, Walter. So bring us up to speed. What is Red Flags in Fandom?
So Red Flags in Fandom is a project which is developing again and again. Every time I'm looking at it, I'm finding new ways to get a message across and change things up. But essentially, it's all about trying to protect both person and pocketbook through awareness and bringing empowering people with awareness about our community. For the most part, is absolutely wonderful. It's the reason why I've been doing this for 30 years plus. I love it. I love this community. It's always going to be a part. I'm always going to be a part of it in some degree, and I've been involved in so many aspects of convention organization, and I'm obviously very passionate about it. But Red Flags in Fandom is seeking to shine a light on some of the stuff the dark side, if you will. There are issues that do show up. Unfortunately, I do see the argument can be made that some of these problems are cyclical and repetitive. And as you and I are very well aware of some problems that were very close to home. So I came up with a project to air out some of these issues, looking at these red flags and saying, okay, this was what was missed, myself included, in a couple of situations where I'm like, oh, if I would have seen that red flag, I would have been avoiding that, like, you know what. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to take the lessons. I mean, you talk about taking the L. We talk about taking the loss. No, you don't take the L as a loss. You take the L as a lesson, because anything done in good faith can be done as a lesson. You can always, it's always important to learn from things, even if things don't go well, to act in good faith and take the lesson and learn from what happened and do better, because we all have that capacity. And unfortunately, also, there's people that choose not to learn from those issues, if not actively engage uh, in activities that are considered red flags.
So, what might be an example of something that is done in bad faith and then eventually someone learns from that? What might be an example someone could like kind of point to? And it
Well,
doesn't have
currently,
to be specific to any one con or whatever.
well, I can tell you about, we have 8 flags currently. This is probably going to get reworked, but at the very top, we have at the very top, I think it's very important to talk about deception. And deception is an intentional act. We choose. It's the choice to act to lie to someone, lie to people, lie to your clients, your customers, your attendees. You're lying to your volunteers, and that's different than making a mistake. A mistake is done in good faith. I've made mistakes. I've tried to learn from them, and thankfully, I don't repeat those mistakes. But deception is an act of bad faith, and they're also done in patterns, especially when you see the same deception being taking place again and again. That's not a mistake. That is a pattern. That's a choice. And we talk about bad faith and good faith. We're all of us are imperfect. We all of us have the capacity to grow, and I think that's a mark of intelligence to realize, oh, that wasn't right. I'm going to do better. Fantastic. All I ask from people is to learn from what didn't go, what went wrong, and learn from that to make it go right. But the issue I want to get to is at the top of the list is called deception. And again, twisting the truth into a lie is bad faith versus, okay, I was wrong. I'm sorry. Hey, how hard was that? Versus, oh no, this is how it is. This is how it's going to go. And you do your own research and you find out, oh, I was lied to. And I have an example of that. We have a couple of examples locally. One of them, you're probably very familiar with this.
Mm-hmm.
In 2017, I was involved with an event that was running a GoFundMe, saying that they needed money, cash money, $2,500 to pay for insurance and maintenance fees to run the show. If they didn't get the money, they couldn't run the show. And they set up this fundraiser, and they targeted their own volunteers in this internal memo and went public with it, with the fundraiser. Well, there was never a need for that money because this event was actually getting funding both in cash and in kind, and those fees never existed is as a need for cash. Those fees were covered by the municipality that was hosting them. So they were active. This event was actively deceiving their own volunteers, targeting their own volunteers in bad faith, and acting out and trying to get them to give the money, even though they're also giving their time and their efforts to participate in this show. And that was when I clued in, and I walked away. And so again, we all make mistakes, but making terrible choices that have consequences for other people, when you know those choices are wrong, that's something that's very terrible. And it plays out quite a bit. There's another incident where another event was advertising celebrities, sports, and wrestling, but the red flag publicly was that the event was being advertised as being at a venue that technically no longer existed. The venue had changed names. And I don't know about you or me, but if I wanted someone to genuinely show up to my show, and I'm going to actually run a show, I would make a reasonable effort to make sure that the address and the names were correct. And I fell into another piece of information from yet another person who was aware of this promoter's history. And I did this wacky thing where he contacted the venue itself. And as it turns out, the venue had canceled the event 2 months prior, yet the promoters were still advertising as if the event was going to happen and were selling tickets ahead of time. And the other red flag was that they had chosen to use the same date as a established event in the same city happening at the same time. So people showed up to the event that was canceled, and despite my best efforts trying to speak out about it, people got ripped off. And so deception, I think, is something major to talk about in regards to this project, because it's something that happens again and again.
Yeah, like one thing I can speak to from my experience in the convention booking specifically, there are so many checks and balances, especially when it comes to booking guests, for example. You
Yeah.
have to make sure you're constantly communicating with their PR team. Mistakes happen. Like, let's say you book a voice actor or a wrestler or whoever. Those dates can change. So you always have to make sure, like, let's say, I don't know, I'm just going to pick a name out of a hat here. Oh, I don't know, let's say Ric Flair, for example, was supposed to show up at your event, but he has to go to, I don't know, North Carolina for some reason. You may have to update your marketing to say, oh, so-and-so canceled. And then that's a good time to update your like advertising. And because a lot of stuff that happens now, it's always digital. There's no reason for you not to be updating your page with correct venue info. Even if something changes, you have to constantly change that, because it's not like the days of yore where you would print like 1,000 leaflets and like, oh shit, things changed, we have to cancel Ric Flair's or Peter Cullen's appearance now. No, it's digital. You can literally just X that shit out with an explanation. And because the speed of social media happens so quickly now, information spreads very, very, very fast. And when I hear about this particular red flag, my public relations training because I have a background in PR and specifically crisis comms is where I specialized when I went to Mohawk School about in 2010, 2009 to 2010. I was like, holy shit, you can't do this. And I know the event that you're like kind of speaking of. And again, we're not going to name names here because it's not really important. But the important thing is due diligence should have been done. And one thing that's really important to remember, and I want young convention organizer, people who think they want to start the next Anime North or the next Fan Expo or whatever, you are not going to make a lot of money, if any at all. Some can, yeah,
I have to speak out because you're absolutely right about the social media and the digital immediacy of information.
yeah,
Because the very first convention, the guest that was back in 1994, the guest that I was looking forward to had canceled out. Now, fortunately, the other guest that was there, Rachel Barrett Roddenberry, she got on the horn and she got a replacement. I love Rachel
awesome.
Barrett Roddenberry. She went above and beyond, and to me, she was just an absolute amazing person. But I'll also talk about the due diligence thing. Thank you so much for putting that out there because not only was a situation with this event having been canceled by the venue, the promoters have been using social media to actively deny and, again, through deception, say that, oh no, the show isn't canceled. You're wrong. Everything's running the way it should be. And like, no, it's not. They were actively deceiving their audience. And so there's an entire swing of, okay, you missed out on due diligence versus an active choice to be deceptive. And that is a huge, huge canyon to cross when it comes to responsibility and accountability. And if anyone's looking for, and also topping, like also heading on to that topic about wanting to run a show, I will guarantee you, your very first show, you will break even if you're lucky. If anyone
Hmm.
wants to do a show, do a 1 day convention, make it just for a few hours, and see what happens. Because
Yeah,
I have watched things implode horribly from people who you would think would know better, and obviously weren't able to do better. And in retrospect, it's you want to say "I told you so," but it's also disheartening because we're all part of the same community. We all, like when I started this project, we all have these common beliefs that I think we all share. We don't want to get ripped off. We want to be safe. We don't want to be a part of a community that we want to be part of an inclusive community. We don't want to be a part of something that harasses or discriminates. We've got infinite combinations and infinite dimensions, or switch that around. But the point is still there. There's Fandom is for everybody, and everyone, especially with the growth of the internet, like you said, with the digital immediacy, everyone's got access to find their people and find their community. And for the most part, everyone has the opportunity to find an awesome community to be a part of.
yeah.
And if anyone's looking forward to running a show, there are people that know what they're doing. The first thing you want to do is get yourself involved with something established and watch what happens.
Yeah, like there are tons of con organizers, and I can speak from this from personal experience. A lot of people are really approachable. I mean, if you have a question, send them an email. If they have a publicly available phone number that's for office hours, you can call, but you can contact people via social media, email, whatever, and have questions. And like Walter was saying, if you choose to run a convention, your first year, you're lucky to break even. And from what I understand, that's a very rare thing. If you run a convention, a lot of it's out of passion because you love it. You want to create something. And as an artist myself, um, don't expect to to make a lot of money at this. The real reward is making people happy. It's creating community.
Thank you. Yes, that's absolutely correct.
And one other thing, I'm looking through your presentation, and you talk about a local medieval thing, just to give you an example. And this is something I've only really come across recently because there's another event happening locally, and they actually kind of touch upon this. And I would love for you to talk about this LARP thing because it talks about deception, and you're talking about photos being taken, actually.
Yeah. So there is a couple of medieval fairs here in Waterloo region, and there's Renfest and Red Fair and all these other events all over everywhere, and they're great. The last time I went to one of them, I dressed up as one of the chanting monks from Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and everyone loved it. And those who caught the reference were old enough like me to go, "Oh no, I recognize that." Um, but this deception was that the top banner for the social media for one medieval fair, someone took that photograph, altered it, and used it to promote what was called LARP in the Park at someone else's convention. Now, there's two problems with this. One, stealing someone else's work to use it as your own, which they did not have permission to do. And there's also a significant public safety aspect here, because LARP is done safely. LARP does not use metal weapons. The photograph features two actors in a rehearsed fight scene that they had worked so hard to coordinate and perform. That's not LARP. LARP uses safe equipment in a safe environment to play out a game. So this convention stole this photograph and then called people performing with metal swords LARP. That is not the message you want to get out there. And I did indeed contact the convention in question, like I had before with people, things that didn't make sense. I go, listen, you've taken this project, you've taken this intellectual property from an organization you got no reason to do so, and use it for your advertising, and advertising something very unsafe. Please do the right thing. And they eventually clued in. And sadly, that's not the only example of intellectual property theft at conventions. So again,
Yep.
when you see it doesn't make sense like that, you got to go, hey, if they're doing this with someone else's property, what are they going to be doing with my money?
Yeah, like I can say, for example, there was one, like I'm always very leery of people using other IPs in their advertising. And there is some legal gray area, but look at it this way. Do you really want to challenge that? Is my next question. But you were talking about weapons, and this is something that I'm actually going to be attending later on this year, weather permitting, and it's the Ontario Pirate Festival. And one of my best friends is really into medieval weaponry. We have like this person has a virtual arsenal at their hands, and they were curious, can I bring my swords to this? And on this website they actually have an FAQ, and it says very specifically, can I bring weapons? Weapons that are appropriate to your costume are welcome. No modern weapons, please. All weapons must be piece tied in place. Swords must be secured with rope or zip ties so they cannot be drawn. No live munitions or working firearms, please. No shit. But weapons will be inspected at the front gate or by security at any time while you're at the festival. Because, for example, I have LARPed. I know, laugh now, but I used to play Vampire the Masquerade.
So did I.
And,
That was
yeah,
enough.
and we all had the rule. You had to, it would be a card would represent a gun or a sword or whatever. But I have been at several unsafe LARPs where people would bring those mall style katanas. Like we all had the replicas of the Highlander swords, myself included, and they would bring them out. And obviously, as much as you want to feel like you're Connor McLeod, there can be only one. You don't want to be drawing live steel, even if it's, this Chinese press garbage. You don't want to do that because all it takes is one mistake and accidents happen. So yeah, that's another thing to, when you're at a convention, you can have cool stuff on your costume. Just, you're not the Highlander. You're not this, you're not that. Just please, if there's going to be people doing stage combat, they are the professionals. They're the ones hired. They can do what they do. You do not.
Right. And a responsible organization, a responsible event will have their rules available for everyone to see. And they will also be having appropriate staff looking over what they have to do. I mean, I'll speak highly of Anime North. I actually know person in charge of taking care of weapons. He and I go back decades, and I respect his I respect his wisdom and his participation in the community for what we have to do. Now, I've also used metal props. Again, this was also a different era when things were allowed to happen. And I did have a sword, but it was peace tied. But of course, when I was doing something on stage, I wasn't striking anything with it, and it was done in a safe environment. And then as soon as I was done off the stage, the first thing I did was hand it over to staff so I could get my cording and my bag out to stash it away and put it into my hotel room because I wasn't able to secure it. So it's like, okay, I'm not going to walk around with a live Klingon sword. I am going to make sure it's safe and secure as best as possible. That, and the fact I don't want it stolen, which has actually happened in the year 2000 at Toronto Trek. A friend of mine had his Klingon sword stolen from a display. But the part that I love about that is the 3 years later in 2003, um, we all got together and raised enough cash to actually get him two Klingon swords, the KLS and the traditional one, and surprised him on stage by presenting it. So you wonder why I'm a part of a community like that. When you see stuff like that happening, how could you not want to be a part of it? And I feel the love a lot of times when I'm at a show. And but getting back onto the topic,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we all need to be responsible for our own actions. Just because we're living a little bit in the realm of fantasy and science fiction, we're all subject to revised statutes of Canada 1985, Chapter 46, otherwise known as the Criminal Code of Canada. And even if it's illegal in our country, it's definitely illegal on a fairground or a convention floor. You need to put safety first. And I have actually been involved in removing people that did not understand that concept, and it does happen. But I praise the organizations who were steadfast in both their making sure that their policies were enforced, but also in line with Canadian and Ontario laws. And the vast majority of people that come for a fun, safe time, because I think that it's important that people have that sense of safety. Uh, to be able to go to a show and know that they're going to have not only they're going to have a good time, they're going to have a safe time. And ultimately, we're all responsible for ourselves. And there are people that choose to shirk that responsibility. And if they can't get their act together, they need to they need to remove themselves from the community until they can.
Now, there was something else that you posted, and this will be another part of your presentation. And this is very interesting because a lot of people think just because they've seen one episode of Law and Order, they're suddenly Supreme Court justice. And this is threats and manipulation. And one of your slides says suppression and avoidance of scrutiny or overreaction to criticism, often with deception and manipulation of situation to avoid hiding uncomfortable information. Please expand upon this.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to find the notes on that just to make sure we're on the same thing. Here we go. So we're talking about the Streisand effect. We've seen that happen. I think you and I have actually watched that happen, where
Mm-hmm.
where someone overreacting to a situation, someone trying to speak on behalf of a convention that's been proverbially be caught with their hand in the till, and suppression and avoidance of scrutiny. Eh, We're all responsible for ourselves, but if you're running an organization, you're ultimately the person in charge of the convention. The owner is ultimately responsible for what happens with how they conduct themselves. And one of the telltale factors that people get caught doing stuff they're not supposed to is overreacting, if not um, trying to suppress people's discussion about it. There's a great example where in 2015, someone lied, claiming that the convention owner was their client. Well, I can tell you for a fact this person wasn't their client. I mean, yeah, we'll leave that alone. I went ahead and also lied in saying that they have a legal team, which they never did. And people were making valid observations about the ugly words that this person had said, the organizer had said, and observations of some of things that were very questionable at best. And the reaction was to, "Hey, take this down, or you're going to get sued." yeah, or essentially trying to impress upon that while lying about having a legal team which didn't exist. So when you're seeing someone act out with you're seeing an organization or someone representing an organization acting out, essentially hitting a mosquito with a sledgehammer, um, that reaction is almost always a giant red flag, just because it's so much easier to go, okay, that was wrong. We're going to do better. Or, okay, we understand where you're coming from. Here's what we saw, but here's what we're going to do. Being reasonable with your reaction is a green flag. Overreacting and getting to personal attacks, and I want to get onto that as well.
Mhm.
Acting out with personal viciousness against someone else in response, which was seen as well. You go, that's a huge red flag. If you can't attack the arguer, if you can't attack the argument, this does. Why are you trying to attack the arguer? Because you have nothing to attack the argument with. And
Yeah.
I want to take this moment here because I've been thinking
Mhm.
about this project again. This is a project that's constantly evolving over the last little while when I've been working on it. There's two stages. There's called threats and manipulation, and there's also what's called personal attacks and hostility. I'm thinking about combining all that stuff into one section and calling it hostility, simplifying it into one stage, which will encompass all of it. And ultimately, if someone's being hostile instead of being reasonable, that's a red flag. Because people, we do get flustered, we do get frustrated, but if you're seeing things that are, like I said, a personal attack, the ad hominem, so to speak, you're watching people attack other people instead of attacking the argument. That's a big red flag there.
Mhm.
And I mean, at most, people that disagree with each other to various degrees of being vigorously opposed. At the most, we should only be opponents, never the enemy. It's undeniable that our world is getting more and more hostile. Undeniable.
Yeah,
And,
things are undeniably rough out there right now.
and
And as things change in Canada and the US and abroad, it's important to remember empathy is not a weakness.
empathy. I don't think I think it's very important actually, uh, not to confuse kindness with weakness.
100%.
I mean, we're all mortal creatures, and and as the old phrase goes, no man is an island. We're all in this in some degree together. And when I see people being hostile, I can understand being frustrated, but actively attacking other people, that's something that we try to escape from in fandom. And we're watching that happen within fandom, a community that various communities actually, with levels of creativity and compassion, which drew me in and continues to draw me in. And I think it's something that resonates with a lot of people. But we're also seeing that that level of hostility creeping up in various methods and various actions, very disconcerting. And I'm going to speak out on it because I think all of us have the capacity to be better. Some people have a lot more to go, a lot more of a distance to travel to get to that point, because we talk about threats and manipulation, and personal attacks. You talked about that the lawsuit thing. Interestingly, the person who was claiming to have a legal team is now actually being sued in Kitchener Court for $250,000 for defamation. And someone on their behalf has set up a GoFundMe to help raise funds for the legal process, and if I last I checked, was not going very well. And I can't help but check out respond to the irony of how someone 10 years ago, uh, sitting anonymously behind a computer, trying to threaten people with false claims of having a legal team, to now actually having to respond as a defendant in court, and not having to reach out to trying to find resources that aren't there to respond as the defendant. I uh, I can't help but note the irony in that.
So yeah, like just because you've seen it on TV, just because you know a few fun words and legalese, don't use them. They're not the black speech of Mordor. It will not help you. It is
No.
not worth it. One of the other things as we begin to wrap things up on this is when you're looking at a convention, I'm not saying you have to do a Law and Order deep dive on a convention to attend it, but it does pay to do your, as we mentioned earlier, due diligence. That means looking at their social media content. That means what are they posting, what's going on. But as a content creator, I'm often encouraged don't read the comments. However, as an attendee and as a fandom, it does pay to read the comments sometimes because you might see something there. Like, what are they saying? What is the response from this organization? And this is a real interesting thing to note when it comes to professionalism. Are they responding in a kind and courteous manner? Are, as you mentioned earlier, Walter, are they resorting to personal attacks rather than attacking the argument? Are they attacking the arguer? And yeah, frustration's going to happen here and there. But if they're calling you a slur, maybe I don't want to go to this thing. Right. So always keep a lookout on what's kind of going on. And, talk to other people in the community. Like, we're all geeks, nerds, and dorks and dweebs. We all know each other. It's almost like the Borg collective in some weird kind of way. We probably know someone who went somewhere at some time. Ask. Look
It's
around. Your community's there to help you.
it's almost like a family reunion at times. I tell you. I have to mention something as well. When it comes to social media, uh, for the most part, has the power to provide good, but unfortunately, as we've all seen in various degrees
Can be
and
weaponized.
various everywhere you see it being manipulated and misused and abused, and fandom is not exempt from that. And another red flag when it comes to social media is watching someone delete a post, watching someone in charge of an event delete replies. I think it was 2010, 2020, or just before everything shut down for COVID. There was a convention that was actively removing replies by people pointing out that their media coverage that they had was actually from years prior. The local media, for the most part, had been avoiding, if not boycotting, this convention. So whoever was in charge of their social media decided to pass off prior reports, like from years before, as being current. And whenever that got pointed out, that person's comment was deleted, and I guess they got banned. So when you're deleting, when they're suppressing information that's honest and truthful and factual, and you have to wonder what's really going on behind the scenes there. And but the social media use, letting people know, like we said earlier, the digital immediacy of getting the information out to people, saying, "Hey, such and such panel has been moved to such and such place. Unfortunately, this person can't attend, or this part has been canceled." Okay, that is a great tool to use. Um, my hats off to organizers who take the time to actually do that. But then we also have other extremes with other fandom organizations, and I have to speak out on this.
Mm-hmm.
This was rotten. There's two incidents that took place. One was a podcast. AKA Hope, that they have shut down. And this is pertinent to you because you have run an awesome podcast. Thank you for having me on the show again. Um, thank you again for having me on the show. This is the first time I've actually been here. I want to make sure I fixed up the context there. Uh, but there was this podcast that made a post equating people who identify as transgender as criminals who engage in sex crimes against children.
What in the actual fuck?
Yeah, that happened. It actually happened about a month before I did the panel at Anime North. It happened in April of 2023, and it was talking about the proposed safe space fines, where people were to protect people from. It, it was a proposal about regarding protests and allowing people to be safe to speak out their mind. I'm all for peaceable rallies and protests. I mean, I in 2020 I volunteered as a first aider at the BLM rally here in Kitchener, and ended up being the biggest protest our city has ever seen. But getting on to the topic here, this fandom organization, in which fandom is for everyone of all all identities. There's something for all of us. We're very inclusive. It's a very safe place to be. That's something I take pride in. And here's this media organization posting, claiming that, equating and saying that with the transgender activists raising the false flag of not feeling safe, they're gonna people are gonna get fined for dressing in women's clothing, performing sexual acts to minors. That I'm quoting some of the stuff that was posted here. I'm just shortening up, but they actually posted this, and if I'm not mistaken, it's still available on their website. I immediately removed them from my life. Anyone who anyone who demonizes someone's identity and equates them as being a child predator, that's, like you say, holy F. There's no space for that whatsoever. We're all
Yeah.
and another thing that happened was during COVID, I believe in science. I believe in doing the right thing. Events that I attend had postponed and did the right thing to play it safe. And there was an event organizer who not only equated his show as being as just as important, his show where you can go buy those little Funko Pops being just as important as going to your local grocer for groceries. Now, his show, I would have to drive an hour to get to, so anything can happen during COVID. And of course, the tow trucks were taking passengers, right? So I'm staying close to home during COVID, trying to do my part to help increase safety, right? Well, this person went ahead and not only did he equate his toy show as being as important as, going getting groceries, he went ahead and called people who followed COVID guidelines, he called them lockdown cheerleaders. And this happened around the same time when I wasn't able to visit my mother. I was very fortunate to have a wonderful mother, and she's also one of the reasons why I'm into science fiction so much. She was living independently and got sick real quick and had to be hospitalized. And within the span of hospitalization, and not being able to attend, the decision was made that she was going to go into hospice care. What had also happened was the hospital had, again, was engaging in COVID safety protocols, which meant that I could not even visit her. She understood the importance of it, and we were texting each other. And she was cogent enough of mind at that time. It sucked I couldn't be there to physically be there with her right that time when she was put into palliative care. But she understood her responsibility, and I understood my responsibility to our community. That safety first. We need to look after each other in regards to when COVID was active. She understood that. Someone dying understood that. This convention organizer did not. And I am relieved to announce that convention organizer no longer runs conventions.
It's disturbing when people do that. It's like fandom is fun. Fandom should be entertaining, should be escapism, but you can't escape the reality of what's happening outside your front door.
Exactly. The real world doesn't escape when you enter the fairground or the convention floor. We're all mortal creatures, and we're all subject to the law. And ultimately, we are responsible for ourselves. And I hopefully, in a enlightened society, we are responsible for each other. And that's one of the things that draws me to the community is a lot of really smart people. A lot of smart people. And it's disappointing when you're engaged in a community like this that you think that's full of smart people when it actively has really wonderful, engaging, and creative people doing this stuff, and then you see this crap happening and going, "That's not us."
Yeah, there's like a lot of, like you said, there are some great people, there's some wonderful people, but there's also some ones I would call questionable intelligence. I'm not quite sure whether you're going to make Starfleet this year, son. It's interesting to say the very least.
I mean, we all have our various levels of skills, and everyone's got a talent. Everyone has abilities. They just got to
Mhm.
dig. try to find what they can do. And, you know, fine, like you say, there are people that have questionable intelligence. I don't care about that. If you have a heart and
Mhm.
you have desire and you want to do something, but all I ask people is to try to have, like we said before, empathy. Empathy is being able to see something from the other person's perspective. That's all it is. And
Yep.
a lack of empathy is a horrible thing. So just all I ask people is put themselves in someone else's shoes and say, okay, if I had this happen to me, would I like that a lot? And it doesn't take a lot of intelligence to go, no, that's not right. So again,
Exactly.
we go back to patterns, we go back to choices, and we go back to uh, uh, act the choice to do things in either good faith or bad faith. And I actually got 4 points I want to bring up. That I summarized this presentation. I've got 4 points that I bring up just to keep it simple as possible. Let me go here. So one of them is again understanding the difference between good faith and bad faith. The good faith is a mistake. Doing the same thing over and over again, doing it with deception, doing it with abuse, doing it to harm people, that's not a mistake. That's a choice, and that's done in bad faith. So understand the idea of good faith versus bad faith. And I'm not talking about anything about religious or spirituality. I'm talking about actual legal terms. Like for example, if in Ontario law, we actually have something what's called acting in bad faith and acting in good faith. Idea being as something being done for the right reason, even though if it may have been wrong. Okay, my information was wrong, but things were done in a certain way that it wasn't done maliciously. Bad faith is malicious. Bad faith is deception. Bad faith is acting against a person or people in a way that's intentionally harmful. So again, know the difference between good faith and bad faith. Um, if in doubt, check it out. Get the data. Like you said, go online. You don't have to do a due diligence, but I mean, if you do a quick web search and you're seeing stuff pop up going, hmm, that doesn't seem right. There might be something to that. Don't take things at face value. I mean, we have we've never been so connected in our lives as we are now. Empower yourself with information and look at something and say, I don't know. I see that same organizer, I see posts about that same organizer showing up every 5 or 10 years or so, ripping people off. There might be something to that happening again. If you see something, say something.
Exactly, 100%. One final point I want to bring up here. You talk about consent and particularly getting your like photos taken and stuff
Sorry,
like that.
sorry, hang on 1 second. I'm almost done. But seeing something, saying something, if you're not comfortable speaking out, you can always send an email or ask a friend. But
Yes,
the last thing, so those are 3 points. The fourth one is to empower yourself. Don't don't be afraid to look at things and say, okay, I don't think that's right. And go ahead and just empower yourself with your own wisdom and your own desire to learn more about something, and then take it from there. Sorry, I didn't ask. Sorry, you got cut off. You'll have to ask your next
Oh,
question.
I was going to say we're just really going to begin to wrap things
Yeah.
up here. One thing I wanted to bring up when it comes to cosplay and consent, a lot of this is common sense. And I've seen people. There are online groups that harass people for cosplay, and you don't have to get your photo taken. In fact, I can actually bring up a very recent example, not directly related to cosplay, but when it came to photo consent. I work social media for an organization here in town, and I had someone who was very clearly acting in bad faith. And they were like, "Hey, can I get a photo with you?" And I asked them why. No reason. And when I saw him and his friends giggling, I'm thinking, I'm not going to do that. So I asked them very directly, because I'm very aware of it. I'm like, where is this going to appear? Is this going on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, Threads? Where? Nowhere. This is for me. I don't believe you. No, you're not doing that. And you have that right. No one has a right to take a photo of you. Is it going to happen? Probably, but you
I
don't
have
have to consent to it.
Okay. I have to clarify something. See, here in Canada, we have what's called one party consent recording.
Mm-hmm.
very famous incident regarding that was the incident with Bret Hart in Montreal in 1997, where he wore a wire and recorded Vince McMahon lying to him. Uh,
Mm.
don't
Montreal
mention
Screwjob stuff, right?
the Montreal Screwjob, exactly right. Now, it's one thing to hold out a video camera or a camera and just get crowd shots,
Yeah.
but like I said, acting with intent and bad faith to go into someone's face and try to get a picture of them, you have the right to be left alone. Um, I saw a news headline about this is going about 10 years almost, where the headline was very irresponsible, where someone was charged with harassment for taking photographs of someone. That's not the charge. The charge of harassment was that this person was following around someone with a camera. It wasn't the taking of the picture. It was the continued following around and harassing someone, even though the person said, please leave me alone. That was the intent. And you can look it up under the criminal code, section 264. There's provisions on there when it comes to your personal safety and what does constitute criminal harassment. So it's a touchy issue. Um, if someone's just going around just taking random photographs, my personal take is if I'm in, and that's also my interpretation of previous Ontario law. I also come from a private investigator background, so I have to know what I'm allowed to do. And that's in the legal trade. For example, if I'm going to take a photograph that's going to be used as evidence, I can't be doing something that I can't submit it as evidence if it's not going to be legal to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my personal take is if I'm in a public area, there's no expectation of privacy, and that's something you can also look up in law. However, if you're telling someone to leave you alone and they don't, that's not you're not in the wrong at all there. In fact, I commend you on your forwardness on that. And if these people chose not to respect your wishes, I'm hoping that facilities were made aware of their
Oh, they
actions.
were. Oh,
Oh,
they were.
but no means no. And I found that's again. I also praise Anime North for their policy on harassment. They actually say that no means no, and cosplay is not consent. But we're talking about the other important part. I talked a lot about deception, and if you'll permit me, the deception is when I started off, that was the alpha, and I'm now going on to the omega. The two most important
Mhm.
things when I started the project was deception and boundaries being not respected. Well, I'm this year, and as part of this project, I'm really emphasizing the importance of boundaries, like you've brought up, that we're all entitled to our personal safety. And if there's people showing up doing something in bad faith, acting out in such ways that makes you feel uncomfortable, by all means, seek out support. At conventions, there's lots of staff that have the radios attached to their heads. You can don't if you're in a situation where you feel unsafe, grab your phone and dial 911. Again, Enemy North has lots of emergency services, both police and ambulance, on site. So I praise them and their efforts for maintaining safety at their event. But unfortunately, when it comes to all that stuff, predatory behaviors, there are people that do show up and do awful things for the sake of refer that they I believe that they psychologically act out as if people who attend these shows are their prey. I am very well aware of someone. I'm not naming names, not naming locations, but I know of someone who would come to events here in southwestern Ontario and actively target young women, if not girls. Um,
Yeah, I've seen some pretty fucked up things too when it came to my convention experiences, and I'm like, what? And it's depressing, sad, and obviously a problem. But yeah, please.
it does happen. It's like I hate to say it, but the onus is on the potential victims to do everything they need to do to stay safe. Like we're telling people to stay in groups, and we're also in a community we pride ourselves on our reasonability and our care for each other. And there's these people that do show up and treat them like prey, and it's important. I mean, one of the grooming examples I remember seeing come up. You're mature for your age. Those 5 words. You know,
Yikes.
yeah, very yikes. And that was spoken by someone who I believe. Again, I'm being very careful about this. But I, along with a number of other people who've had interactions with this person, we believe this person is a predator and has acted predatorially, actively seeking out the younger women at events that I was actually a part of the safety team of. And but this person was acting in such a way that it wasn't overtly violating any particular rules, but was doing it persistently. So we almost had a tail. We pretty much had a tail on him, like essentially having some people who were out of uniform because our group, we were wearing very distinctive uniforms and equipment and signage on us, like our identification that denotes us as legitimate convention representatives. People who are actually involved in the safety department of the events. But we actually had some people who went undercover, so to speak, and were keeping a kind of an eye, because there are people that do show up at these shows. Give you an example. My very first year, I was a first responder to a medical emergency where someone broke their leg at the dance. And as I was attending and trying to clear the space, so because if when you're doing first aid, the most important thing you got in just any emergency situation is communication. I couldn't hear the casualty. That's what first aiders call the person who's injured.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty minor, but it hurt like hell. And as I'm trying to clear the area, so someone else was actually a nurse taking over, I look up and there's this guy dressed almost exactly like a member of our team, and he nods at me. This person went out of their way to impersonate the official staff, the official security staff of this convention, and interfered. He was actively interfering with our emergency.
What the
And
hell?
yeah, this was July of 2000, and I mean, I can write. Again, I've got the incident reports to draw upon. This guy was a member of a local fan group, and he went so far as getting a shirt printed off, and somehow knew the font of what our shirts were going to look like. Someone had given them that inside information, and then printed it so at first glance it looked like our organization and our department, but it didn't actually say that. And he wore his badge in a certain way with an accoutrement. I'm not going to go into details. The same way we did, and actually was walking around with a scanner intercepting the channels. So he was listening in on all of our conversations. Now, to his credit, listening to open channels on radio isn't illegal, but he was actively using that information to interfere with official operations as well as interfere with an emergency. And he was removed from the scene. Um, but for some reason, I don't think I saw him for the rest of the weekend, but for some unforeseen reason, he was allowed to attend the following year, and he was caught. We saw him using his scanner, and so since he was listening on our channels, we were actually calling him out on the radio, going, "Oh yeah, there's Scanner Boy." Yeah, midway through Saturday, he took off, and I'm relieved to say that we never saw him attend again because he realized he was not very welcome. But talking about boundaries, the little aside there, we want to wrap things up. I appreciate that. I'm going to get to I'll wrap up here. But boundaries, you don't give up the right of your own personal safety by going to a convention. And a responsible convention will uphold their rules. Will have rules and uphold them. There was a incident that took place in 2019 where a volunteer had quit a volunteer meeting because the guy in charge of the convention was making claims that people are going to be coming in to make false claims of harassment and not to do anything if these people not don't get involved if someone has a problem. I'm going, what the heck? And to make matters worse, the so-called official representative showed up on the social media post to go so far as to claim that the person in charge who owns the convention, in charge of the convention, running the volunteers meeting, was not saying anything that reflected upon the official policies of the convention. And we're all looking at each other going, what what? So when things don't add up and you feel that you're unsafe, don't go. Take care.
Exactly.
Any organization worth attending will be reasonable when it comes to your personal safety. You know, you're not going to have a bodyguard walking around with you, but in the same token, they're going to make take some reasonable steps to realize that there's going to be a lot of people there and there's going to be some issues. And if there's an issue, they have means in which to respond to it. And that's all part of a responsibility and accountability that we have for each other.
Yeah, I mean, we all have to look out for ourselves out there, but we can also help each other out as we go to these events moving forward. So, Walter, I got to thank you for taking time out of your busy day as convention season is starting to ramp up. So, people want to find out more about your presentation, and as this project evolves, where would they have to go?
Well, the website is called redflagsinfandom.com. It's probably going to get adjusted because I'm thinking about changing some of the flags, but the general sense is there of how to go to redflagsinfandom.com and poke around. And if you got some ideas, shoot them my way. You can find my email address there. There's an about me there as well, so you can find out my personal site and some of the other media coverage I've had throughout the years. And thank you, Mike and Twig crew, for having me on the show, and thank you to all the listeners who have put up with me yammering on and on.
All right, good time. So, guys, like I said, please check out redflagsinfandom.com. You can find Walter online on Blue Sky. You can find his information. You can often see him interacting with me online. So, yeah, make sure to reach out to him, and hopefully you will see him around at the convention scene if you happen to be in Southern Ontario this year. So anyway, guys, I am going to get out of here as I prepare to do more conventions this year as I'm getting around Southern Ontario a little bit more. So anyway, guys, until next time, I've been Mike the Birdman for thisweekingeek.net saying be safe out there, but if you've learned anything from this conversation, be excellent to each other. We'll catch you guys again next time, right here on thisweekingeek.net.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
Lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.